So after the disappointing Mafia II remaster, we now have the Mafia Remake, the original game with a few changes in its narrative and gameplay, but all rebuilt from the ground up in every sense of the word. Mafia always had a loyal following, many who enjoyed its story and characters, but also its simulation elements, which would see police crack down on any wrongdoing much more severely than in other open world games. That following, I believe, will continue with this remake, but also bring in many more fans as well. After the disappointing Mafia 3 as well for myself, this Mafia Remake has hit almost every high note there is, and after I completed it, I just sat there looking at the credits roll, enjoying even more of the music and just reflecting on what had been such a fantastic game. From its beautiful visuals and sound, to its expertly told story, to its revamped cover system and gameplay, and all of it being set in this vast, open world, but which doesn't let itself get bogged down in some of the negatives associated with large open worlds. Throw in the 1930s time period, including the crime and some politics of the day, and you have one of the best story-driven games I've played this year. This is one family you should most definitely get to know, and if you like the review, please like it, share, or give it a comment. So we'll start with the graphics and performance, as they were two of my biggest complaints when it came to Mafia II Definitive Edition, which I have a review on if you want to check that out as well. And fortunately, the remake does a really great job when it comes to this area, but it is by no means perfect. Focusing on the bad first, whilst playing on the Xbox One X, I noticed that there were many times where you could see some subtle objects being drawn in, where it was a balcony on a building or smoke from a smokestack, which would pop in if you quickly turn the camera in that direction. Shadows would also get drawn in at times, and traffic off in the distance along long stretches of straight road would allow you to see the cars slowly fade into existence. Another odd occurrence was that small traffic signs on street corners would begin to fade out the closer you got to them for some reason, and of which I didn't like at all. It was a small thing that takes you out of the game world. The other area that could have been improved upon was some of the animations at times with all of the characters, but this is during the gameplay more so, not so much the cutscenes. When walking or running, or how Tommy opens the door, I thought the animations and how one blends into one another could have some extra frames just to smooth them out and make them a little bit more realistic. In the case of opening doors, it would have made it a little more subtle and for the better. These just stood out, as at other times the animations can be quite good, such as moving in and out of cover as you let a few shots off and then reload. During the cutscenes, everything just has an extra step up in quality when it comes to the animations as well, and that goes for character facial movement too, which is overall being of a very high quality, even though there were a few times, even with the main characters, where they were lacking some subtle facial expressions or eye movement to bring the scene to life even more. I noticed this a few times, and it was only with a couple of them, whilst other characters, including our own playable one, didn't have the issue. The only other real weakness would be load times, which I found were a bit long upon death, even when I was running the game from an SSD on the Xbox One X. So they're pretty much the negatives out of the way, so let's focus on the positives. For a start, the game ran extremely well on the Xbox One X, and the game felt like it was running at a constant 30 frames a second most of the time, only ever dipping occasionally, and when it did, it was never too drastic nor detrimental to playing the game, and it was only very, very minor. It would then quickly return to peak performance, and when it ran this well, I didn't mind putting up with the issues I stated above. And this great performance goes hand in hand with the detailed and beautiful graphics, which at times just look stunning. Just check out these water reflections on the road and how everything has a slight shimmer when wet. It looks stunning just as it does when the opposite is the case. When the sun is out and you see the light bouncing and dancing off the surfaces such as your car, seeing the surrounding environment being reflected off the shiny exterior, it all looks fantastic. The car models themselves all look excellent, both in their detail and the variety of vehicles on offer. The open world itself, whether it be the buildings located in New Haven or the trees and more countryside locations as you travel out of the big smoke, they've all been brought to life by Hangar 13 in such great detail. On the Xbox One X, it seems to be running at full 4K, and that contributes to just how good the cutscenes are. Apart from a few hiccups as mentioned earlier, characters tend to have some great detail in their faces, whether it be their eyes or the different shade of skin and how each moves when talking. And it's in the eyes that can make or break a scene, especially when storytelling is such a central part of the game. I'm glad to say that Mafia basically gets this right, which is good to see. Add in that extra detail such as characters smoking or drinking and some great cinematography, and the characters and their story becomes one of the strongest parts of the game, easily. In regards to the story, you play as Tommy Angelo, who ends up joining the Salieri crime family after you get beat up by the members of the Morello family and they destroy your taxi. In terms of characters, Tommy Angelo has enough charm and likability to carry the game over its 10 to 12 hour main story, but he also has a heart and a conscience too, something that gets displayed more not only by his own actions, but by those around him, often being the opposite. Mafia is an open world game, but its mission structure or campaign is very linear. You make your way from one mission to the next. You don't have a map filled with icons or side quests. Mafia is about its story and its characters. The supporting cast is all top notch as well, with there being no real weaknesses in terms of characters or how they're portrayed by the voice talent. If there was a flaw, then it would be with Tommy's love interest Sarah. This relationship has been expanded upon from the original, and extra scene time has been given to Sarah and Tommy together, and I have no issue with this. The problem lies in that I just wanted more of it. Sarah is played and voiced very well, and there is a genuine connection between the characters. I just wanted it to be expanded upon more, as there are multiple hours which go by where you don't see them together at all. Even when I thought one of the other characters was a little one-dimensional, they have their own one or two scenes which develops their character and gives them more of a basis in reality. And even though I've already touched on it slightly above, let's talk about the sound, and we'll start with the voice acting. And this is pretty simple to describe. It's excellent. Really very well done, with my standouts being the voice of Tommy and the Don, the head of the Salieri crime family. And actually, the head of the Morello family is also fantastic. Really, at no time did I have a problem with the voice acting. It was subtle when needed and ramped up when it was required to. It's almost as if the voice actors didn't even need to try, and I mean that as a compliment. They all sounded so damn good, and the voice actors I felt matched the characters they were meant to be portraying, which adds that extra layer of authenticity. Even the fringe characters such as the mechanic or the barman give the same excellent performance as the rest of the cast. The script is also very good, whether it be the dialogue during the main story or cutscenes, or whether it's the small talk when driving from location to location. Since the game is very linear, there really isn't any filler, which is a good thing. Conversations between characters are there to set up missions, enhance relationships, or to further the story, so everything is very tight and to the point. And everything only adds to the whole package, including the new scenes and dialogue with Sarah. Sound effects all sound great, from each of the vintage cars you'll control and their different engine noises, the screeching of tyres when you take a corner too quickly during a chase sequence, the sounds of sirens or the beefy sound of gunfire from a shotgun or a Tommy gun, listening to an absolute barrage of bullets, shattering glass or splintering wood during either a gameplay shootout or one of the many fantastic cutscenes. Everything sounds authentic, and it only gets better as we listen to the wide selection of songs, whether they are playing on the radio in the car or the music which accompanies everything. The authentic music of the 1930s, which included swing, jazz and big band, with iconic composers and singers such as Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway, who appear multiple times on the soundtrack, to Mildred Bailey, whose voice brings this decade to life. The music is different from the first game, which didn't bother me at all, as I can't remember what those original songs were, as I haven't played the game for so long. Then we have the opening score, which is just such a beautiful piece of music at all times and perfectly sets up the world of Mafia, its story and its characters. This is all even more impressive, of course, considering the challenges which 2020 has had and what the developers needed to do in order to record all of these sound effects, dialogue and pieces of music. What we have is top shelf sound in the Mafia remake across the board. It's fantastic. And then we have the gameplay, which has changed quite considerably when compared to the original. Gunplay and the cover system have been overhauled, so it plays much more like a modern game and similar to Mafia 3. The original game could also be very difficult at times, but now we have more options, so players can tailor the experience more to what they want. If you just want to experience the story and have minimal challenge, then easy mode is for you. This mode has weaker enemies, you can drive how you want, and police will turn a blind eye to almost anything but the most serious of crimes. Bump it up to medium or hard and they will pull you up for more things, especially the violent crimes, but even more minor infractions. and then playing on classic difficulty, which resembles the original game much more. This will see police pull you over for even going over the speed limit, and which you'll need to pay a fine for. Police will also chase you for longer and be more aggressive. Enemies won't show up on your minimap either, so this mode is for those who want a hardcore Mafia experience, but there are also other options that can be toggled on and off within the difficulty modes to make it more difficult or less challenging. Driving the cars feels good, even if they all drive like a brick with wheels at times, and this can be more forgiving or challenging based upon how you want to play. And we also have motorcycles in this version too. Now when it comes to gunplay, we have a proper cover-based shooting system where you can move in and out of cover with a simple button press, and you'll be doing this even more on the higher difficulties as enemies will throw Molotov cocktails to make you have to move out of that cover. I found the cover system and the shooting mechanics to be responsive, and I was easily whipping in and out of cover to fire off some shotgun shells into the nearby enemies, and it was also satisfying to fire up the Tommy gun and try and control its recoil, especially when those enemies were a bit further away. Even the pistol or revolver I found to be satisfying to use. As mentioned before, Mafia is a linear game set in an open world, so even though the world itself is quite large, there isn't a whole lot you can do apart from the main story missions. It's a large setting, but what you're doing within it is focused, and this in no way hinders the game at all. It's one of its greatest strengths. For those who are really only wanting the story, players can even skip certain driving sections when moving from mission to mission. I never did this, as I enjoyed exploring the setting and the scenery, watching the other cars and pedestrians move around, or seeing the smokestacks belching out the pollution. A time period where electronic consumer devices were beginning to be manufactured as well. It's just such a great setting. If you have any interest in perhaps checking this game out, then I suggest that you do. It's cheaper than a full-priced game, and you'll get to revisit a fan favourite from the early 2000s, but which has been improved upon in several areas. This is a complete remake in every sense of the word, and it was a joy to play from start to finish. It looks and runs beautifully, sounds amazing, plays great, and delivers on its story, characters, and has such strong performances from each of them. You won't be spending dozens of hours in this game though. It may be worth replaying at higher difficulties if you don't start off with it, but whether you do or don't, this is a world worth experiencing. The Mafia Remake delivered beyond my expectations and solidified itself as my favourite game in the series. I highly suggest you become a part of this family.